Good morning, everyone. I'm your host, Shashi, with you all on Global Women Dialogue Talk Show to create more voice for women and by women. And as we always say, here we bring speaker from all around the globe. We have covered 64 countries so far by having these different speaker from their different field, different experience, different their life journey to inspire, to motivate you and to grow together. In same way, today we are connecting a very experienced a speaker who is connecting from London. She is a London-based lecturer. She is a fashion researcher, hairstylist, and advertising executive. Recently, she has launched something very new, which is called Unbiased Label Podcast. Let's welcome our today's speaker, Zara. She's connecting with us, and let's hear from her how we can learn from her experiences, her life journey, and to get some inspiration for our life as well. So, welcome, Zara, on our Global Women Dialogue Talk Show.
What a pleasure, what an honor. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Jara, for joining us and giving us your valuable time. As I know you are a researcher, and we, as a researcher, we are always occupied with a lot of things. But taking our time for sharing your work with our audience, our listeners, it creates value for us. So let's talk about you as a person who has grew up in all the way by maybe what kind of life journey you had in your childhood, what kind of circumstances you had in your childhood, and how they defined you as a person as you are today.
I think that's a great question because who we are as individuals comes from where we come from in our life experiences as humans as far as what shapes us. And so for me, I am a second generation American on both sides of my family. On my mom's side, they came over in 1949 after World War II ended during the Stalinization era. And on my father's side, they came over probably 20 years before that. So growing up, I came from a very hard work ethic, humble roots. And I was told in the American dream that education is the key in the future. So I consider myself a product of my heritage and my legacy. And I'm very grateful to have that connection, which as a child, I wasn't always honoring of that because I felt different. You know, going home and having a very ethnic family and speaking a different language, and then going to school and hearing a very American sort of white mentality. I came home and I looked at my family sometimes with my nose up in the air, which it isn't until later that I realized how special and valuable my family background is in many different ways. So I lived in America until I came to London 2019. So there's a lot that happened in between there, but my family roots are very important to me.
Yeah, I think that's very interesting way you brought about your life journey and how you found that roots are so important for as individual to grow and to understand and keep having those strong connection bonding in our life. So when we talk about your roots, you are yourself as a researcher in fashion designer. Do you find these roots helps you in your work as well?
So for me, fashion is a very personal relationship. Growing up, I was surrounded by fashionable women. The women in my family got dressed every Sunday for church. Sunday was a big highlight of the week. Saturday was setting the hair with the pin curls. And Sunday, there was a full meal on the stove before we went to church. And when we came home, it was a full family meal. There was a lot of visiting and it was a full day affair. So for me, I saw the women, including my mother, who is very fashionable. You know, this sort of sense of pride of aesthetic that I also fell in love with. So my earliest memories of fashion being my friend was probably, I want to say, when I was 8 years old. And my mom, God bless her, she's a very free spirit in a lot of ways, where she let me do whatever I wanted to do. And I remember I had this pink tiered, more of a hot pink tiered skirt that I absolutely loved. And I went through some health issues when I was younger, and I had to have a lot of surgeries on my ear. And to me, being an only child, having friendship or solace, I felt alone a lot. So fashion for me was a way of connecting and having an emotional outlet. So this skirt, it was a time that I was going through of life that it wasn't a great time. And when I wore this skirt, it made me so happy. And I felt like I could do anything, be anything. I felt like a different person. And my mom said, you can wear that skirt every day to school. And I did for like months. And she'd wash it, hang it up, and I'd wear it again. And it was at that point that I really loved fashion for what it made me feel. And I didn't know about fashion magazines or the world of fashion. I just knew my family and how I felt. And at that young age, it was a very formative connection and relationship that was built with fashion for me.
Yeah, and I think the way you are sharing about these connection, and the further you found yourself, you are having in the same industry or career, and you worked in this, and currently also you are, I think, doing your research as well in the same field.
Yes, so when I graduated from college was not a option, and I wanted to go to fashion school actually. And my parents said, this was a long time ago. At that point, that wasn't considered a stable career. So they said, you can do whatever you want after you finish a traditional 4-year degree. And I did. And then I went directly to hair school. And throughout my life, I've held this sort of dualistic sense of being an artist, being a hairstylist, makeup artist, and then having a serious career in sales. And then I was in advertising for 10 years. So at that point, I reached a lot of goals and dreams when it came to my advertising career, being a hairstylist, and I couldn't ask for more. And it's at that age where you're turning 40 and you reevaluate your whole life and you say, what am I doing with my life? Who am I? And you question everything. And I said, I want to go back to fashion. That's my first love. I'm not a fashion designer. I know that. I think it's incredible. But at the same time, ruminating in my head is society and culture and people. How do I make sense of all this? Well, I went back to my first love, and I found fashion critical studies as a master's degree. Parsons offers a degree, and so does Central St. Martin's in London. I applied to both, got accepted into both, and I said to myself, both are great programs. If I'm going to completely change my life, I'm going to go outside of my habitat and really go for it. So I chose Central St. Martin's, and I pursued my academic career at that point, researching fashion through the lens of culture theory from a very deep, critical, analytical perspective, which is when I found this new world of academia, I found a tribe of people that were like-minded, and I felt like this was something that I could express in a way that felt good. So I've just continued that journey of academia onto PhD research, staying in London. And I started at a traditional 4-year degree school in sociology, and now I'm back to an artistic creative environment at Kingston School of Art under Janice Miller, who's a fashion theorist. And I'm studying the art of styling hair, examining hair extensions.
Yeah, and I think it seems interesting when you are bringing your all experiences, and you mentioned that you worked as a hairstylist as well. So when we are talking about as a hairstylist and as a attached and so much passionate about fashion, we are here as trying to develop more dialogue for women's. How you find somewhat some way it is sense of, like, as you said, you used to feel very confident with same skirt and wearing over and over again. So bringing same way the hairstylist or maybe fashion designing, do you find these kind of things are very important for a woman or for any gender, and how it can be empowering?
Well, for me, being a hairstylist is something that was really important to me because I felt like my job was to empower women and all types of women. I had clients that were billionaires that ran 5 companies. I had yoga soccer moms. And to me, women are very important. Going back to my family, it was a matriarchal family on my mom's side. My dad's, it was patriarchal, like funny enough, but all across the board, very strong women. And I really, in my heart, love women very much. So for me, I've always used my tool to understand, promote, help women in a way as an artist to make them, help them feel good and really allow them to shine. I think society is built as a way where in many cultures, women are the submissive sex. And we are told that we need to be lesser than, which I've been told throughout my life because I have a big personality, I have a voice, I really don't mind ruffling feathers at times. And so sometimes people they don't like that. And so I know what it's like to be a woman in the workforce. And so that perhaps that's why I care so much about that.
Yeah, that's so important. And when we are talking about getting new aspects in your career life after having a lot of year of experience and uh, getting into academia, which is many times scary for many of people, even though they want to do, how you find that courage or what uh, what made you all of a sudden so inspired? Would you like to share? It can be
Yeah, it
inspiring
was
for
a
our audience as well.
I think it's a really good point you're making because when I switched to academia, I have never considered myself a academic in the traditional sense. I've always identified as an artist. That's been my language.
Right.
But so and I've done that well and I've done business well on terms that maybe haven't fit best with the politics, but I believed in myself and I knew that if I work hard enough, this goes back to work ethic, then you can accomplish anything that you want. It's a really foolproof ingredient, formulaic mentality. Work hard, results will always be there. So I knew that, and I knew how to work hard. But saying that, going into an academic environment, not having been in academia for 20 years and being surrounded by these really intelligent people that have a new language, a way of speaking, writing, I was very intimidated. And I wasn't very good at the beginning. And I knew it, and it was okay. But I approached it with this mentality of work hard, but keep going and learn. And I think most importantly, I created some great friendships with women that I really inspired me, that I admired, and they helped me get better. I mean, I knew I wasn't good, so I didn't pretend to be good. And I asked for help and I just kept going. And at the end, I became good and I graduated with distinction. So I knew that if people of a certain level that were tough were saying I was good, then I said to myself, maybe you need to admit you're not too bad. But that journey was really tough. I think relationships are really important, being vulnerable. I really leaned on not just the academic friendships that I made, but also my supervisory team. My the head of the program at the time, Dr. Tynan, who was my supervisor, she was really instrumental in shaping me. And at times I said, I need to just have a therapy session because I admitted I don't feel good enough. All these things in our mind that we tell ourselves, I'm not good enough. Somebody's better than me. And who do I think I am? The doubt. You have to push through that. And if I didn't address it at that time, it would be following me right next to me. And so I knew I had to beat that down, deal with all the insecurities, and sort that out so I can pick up and move on. And that's all we can do in life. But you can only do that with support and help from other people that can help you.
I think those are very really strong and great point you are sharing about how switching off from one all the way from the career perspective and seeing yourself and making yourself vulnerable, as you said, which is very hard for many of people. They feel like they feel it's hard for them. If we talk about these vulnerability and especially women, how you see, as per your experience, you shared bit of, but how you see in your surroundings, do you find it's getting change in women or in general, or how you see that?
It's interesting because it's changing and then it's not changing. So I don't really know the answer to that particular. It's hard for me to surmise or give a broad stroke answer. I will say that I think the type of vulnerability is changing. I think there used to be a confusion, which I never really embraced or liked, where people opened up on personal things that I didn't really care to know in a professional setting. Because we weren't friends, we were colleagues, but it was seen as open and vulnerable. But it doesn't mean that you're necessarily an open, vulnerable person because you're sharing everything about yourself.
Right.
I think what's changing is a deeper connection. And that deeper connection takes time to build. You can still be strong. You can still be opinionated. You can still not feel like sharing all your deepest, darkest secrets or things that you don't want people to know. You can still have privacy and be a very open, emotionally connected, vulnerable person. And I think that new thought process is what's rising up. With women, at least, because this notion of women are this way where we have to be womanly, and we can be as strong as nails and still be very much a woman. And it's interesting because I talk in academia about Dr. Tynan, who was so influential to me, but she has this reputation of being a very stoic person. And that's what I love about her. And they're always surprised that you got that close emotionally. I'm like, very much so, because people mistake often vulnerability with diarrhea of the mouth, and that's not what vulnerability is. To me, I think it's how you view vulnerability of strength and position, self-assurance, self-confidence. And when you have that strong sense of self, you're able to connect with other people on a level that allows them to be who they are. And so I think the definition of vulnerability is changing personally. Right. And sometimes vulnerability is anger. Sometimes it's frustration. Sometimes it's being open enough to say, I'm really frustrated and I'm going to tell you, and we're going to have this uncomfortable conversation. And that is vulnerable. So it's not this, to me, vulnerability isn't always roses and happiness and we're best friends and we're friends. No, that is something completely separate that I don't identify with. So to me, vulnerability is a much deeper, more complex way of existing because it is uncomfortable. It is being true to who you are. And it's also having boundaries and strength and clarity and being afraid to fail and putting yourself in positions that you may not always like. So vulnerability isn't this cupcake notion. Vulnerability is a completely different type of maturity that it takes and requires to put yourself out there in a holistic way and take some bullets sometimes.
Right. So, Zara, when we are talking about, it's very strong point when we are bringing in our own life, as well as we are trying to make our audience or whoever is listening us to make them understand what is really vulnerability and how one can decide and define in their own life perspective of growth and development. Moving ahead, it's all required some sort of leadership style. How you see these points in your life, how you are defining these definition in your life to grow and move ahead. So you are setting up your own leadership style in some sort of way. How you see your leadership style if we are talking all those points?
You know, it's so funny because I've been told throughout my life that I'm not a leader. I've been told I'm not a leader. I can't trust what you're going to say, but you're a leader. It's been this dichotomy of back and forth. And I finally said, I don't know. I can't understand. I can't read a book and say, this is my leadership style. Right. If I'm really honest, how I lead in life, whether it's in a classroom, my work, meetings, regardless of the platform, is honesty. And I think when you're an honest person and you try to be fair and you're going back to putting yourself out there and saying things as you think they are, that creates an open dialogue for debate for other people to challenge you. So I like to be challenged because I want to grow, learn, become better. So I really, if that's a leadership style says challenge me, then that would be my style.
Right. Yeah, I think being in academic and it brings my experience, like each time you are sharing and you are keep getting challenged, it brings like your better writing, better all the way, better.
I love it. I live for it.
That's so true. And when we are talking all these, would you like to share maybe during your work life, during your all these decisions you have taken and you are taking so far, you found like, yes, it is somewhat somewhere, maybe your own in family life or in your friends or maybe in larger spectrum of when you are lecturing, someone got impacted in positively in their life and they made better decisions?
Well, you know, you're talking about influence and you're asking who has been impacted by my life. I want to say that everyone that comes into my life is impacted one way or another. And that's because I show up fully. It's hopefully good. Sometimes it's not, I'm sure. But since moving to England, I have a friend that I've known for many years, and she's moving here in the fall to pursue her dreams. She said, if you can do it, I can do it. And I think sometimes in life, it's just that simple, that if you look at somebody else and you say, wow, you did something that I admire. If you could do it, then I can do it. And that's what we should all be doing for each other as women, is uplifting each other up. And that's what it's all about, the network of sisterhood.
Wow. That's really a big impact. I can say like somebody's taking very strong decision and all the way from, moving one place to another place. It takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of decision making. And I'm glad that you shared how you influenced or impacted someone's life for their betterment. When we are talking all about how you see in your life, you mentioned your mother has impacted you, your family has impacted you. How you find those impacts some sort of way give you your own way to create your direction in your life?
You know, being surrounded by strong women and coming from a family that survived concentration camp and lost everything and had to start over, that gave me a real courage in my life to move past fear. And that's something that I always, if there's fear, I address it. And if there's truth that needs to be found, I don't always like to look at it. And sometimes I battle, of course, myself, but it's that seeking, it's that wanting to just keep moving forward and given the freedom to have life. You know, I think having life is so important. And because I have been given so many freedom and liberties from my own family, I haven't adopted a lot of social pressures myself. I'm, 43 years old. I've never been married. I have no children. I don't have pressures to have a husband or have children. I really want to live my life on my terms. I sometimes get sad, and it's really hard to not have the support of a husband or feel the love of having my own family. But that sadness turns into, it's okay because I'm working on a purpose that's bigger than me. And hopefully when I leave this earth, there will be bit of me in that process of becoming who I'm supposed to be. And maybe the future of the sadness there will be filled with joy. And I think in life, we can't have it all at the same time. We have sadness and joy. And it's okay to hold spaces for both. And that was a really hard lesson for me to learn, where I am happy and fulfilled, and I'm also sad at the same time because of this. And I feel that sense of longing a lot. You know, I feel so grateful for my family who supports me and loves me. And perhaps this is why I'm able to take this journey. And then I feel sad because of the past and not cherishing it when I have it, when I had it back then. So I'm a very wistful person, but a very hopeful, positive person at the same time. And I think holding space for both is okay. And so, yeah, I think that's kind of my own personal journey.
Yeah, and I think when you are talking about these personal journey, you started your own podcast as well, where you bring different voices. What is all about? Would you like to share how it helps others?
I'd love to share. Listen, this journey has been, I'm 22 episodes. I haven't missed a week. I produce it. I edit it. You know, it's a lot of work. I write it. I deal with sound. I mean, it's been a huge learning curve, but I did it because I wanted to increase my voice. And there's something that a lot of women were taught, were learned in society, that our voice should come across a certain way that's palatable. And I wanted to just, for myself, use a voice and amplify other voices. So within fashion, within the world in general, there is a narrative that is, I'm going to just call it like a whitewashed narrative that everyone sort of adopts to. And I've never lived that way. If there's an inside group, I've always been on the outside, but yet on the inside, but I like to be on the outside. Right. So I created this podcast to really fill that void of having discussions that are thought-provoking, focused on fashion, focused on culture, which really, if you understand fashion, you understand the world, and at the intersection of industry and academia. So most of my guests are women, people of color, queer, trans. I like to hear and talk with people that have a perspective that's different from the world, what the world says is the perspective. And so I like to break through that. That's why it's called Unbiased label.
And when we are talking all about your bringing those voice, amplifying these voice, you are some sort of way creating new definition of fashion. So when we talk about fashion, how you define the definition of fashion? Because as if we see, it has been defined in a very sexualist way. Okay, the female attire, female dress up, female, there's male, and or maybe some other different way, different genders. How you define a definition of fashion?
That's, to me, fashion being used as a tool for control, and that's society. And for me, fashion is, the power belongs to the person wearing the fashion. And to me, fashion is an artistic expression of who you are, and it's a sense of individuality. That is fashion used properly. If you go back to the beginning of humanity, when fig leaves became fashionable, fashion has always been a way of covering our bodies to be able to live properly within society. So within that structure, society has created these norms of what's beautiful. And these false narratives of beauty norms have been dictating fashion for centuries. And that's the control that I don't like. That, I mean, it's happened to me. You know, I'm old enough where when I entered the workforce, if you didn't wear pantyhose or nylons in the United States of America, you were considered unprofessional. Women had to be and look a certain way, as well as men in other ways. We're talking about women. So fashion has very much been used as a form of control. I view fashion as a form of expression and freedom. So I'm on the completely different side, but that's because I have a personal relationship with fashion. I believe if you love it and this makes you the happiest person in the world, that's all that matters. I may not like it. I may look at that and say, well, I don't know. Would I wear that? But at the end of the day, if you are walking through this world and you're thrilled with what's on your body, it's done. Fashion has done its job.
Mm-hmm. You're right. Yeah, exactly. Because as for my understanding, as you explain, or as I understand always, fashion is definitely a way of your individuality, or way of expression of yourself, and accepting other things, like rather than following, is bringing more diversity and inclusiveness in subconsciously, rather than just you are talking, okay, we are this, we are that, we accept this. But you are, if you accept different different people, their own way of expression, what they are would like to bring in their life, is more diversification and inclusiveness, isn't it?
Well, you're asking if people want diversity and inclusion?
I'm just sharing how fashion can play a big role to create in diversification and in diversity and inclusiveness. Because many times, as you said, following a similar trend or being in similar path is moreover, you are some sort of it subconsciously or maybe consciously stopping people way to express their way of maybe thinking, or the way they want to be, individual way, what they want to express.
Well, fashion is like the world. It's racist. It's power controlling. It's patriarchal. The problem with fashion, if fashion is a reflection of society in general, is men have the power, and women that are defined as beautiful have lighter skin, thinness of waist, and there's a certain social status of wealth. If you tick these boxes, then you are considered desirable. But if you fall outside of these boxes, you're considered ugly, not desirable. And fashion has been a big proponent of these social ills, if you will. And until we can start to say, large is beautiful,
we are hearing a lot, and I think it's very good way to talk about these things.
But you go back to the 70s, and that's why when you want to know what's going on, you go straight to the top. What changed in the 1970s in America, especially? Black was beautiful. If you looked at the Battle of Versailles in 1973, 10 out of the 30 models were beautiful African American women. We had an African American designer. We had African American singers, and they took fashion by storm. So much where you had these historic courtiers in Paris that said, oh my gosh, Black is so beautiful. Where have we been? And there was a huge shift in a dynamic, which is how the world should be, seeing the beauty outside of the perceived. And then there was a shift. So the world goes in these shifts. It goes in these cycles. We're in a shift now, and hopefully things shift for the better. And in my ideal world, the majority will become the minority, and the majority, they will become the minority. There'll be a flip. So we'll see.
Right. Yeah, that's so true. And I think those are bringing those very important point when you are talking about fashion, how the society brings in their life, how they change, is very important by associating with your work. So when we all talk all those points and bringing these shifts, we have another talk show which is called Be a Man, where we bring those different professionals in their own life as a man, what they are doing. But apart of that, as a man, like in society, it's been defined, being a man means this macho man, bodybuilding, and not to be themselves. Leaders are not supposed to cry. They are not supposed to be emotional, right? But when they are a child, they always have equal emotions. But all of a sudden, when they start growing up, those get disappear. So bringing those definition is really important. In same way, when we ask you how you feel in coming time when you are thinking this shifting or bringing these changes, how you feel by your work, you can create some new definition in fashion?
Well, I think you raised a very important point, and a lot of my work thus far has been focused on masculinities, which at
Oh,
first I said, listen, I'm here to promote women. Is this a sin that I'm discussing masculinities? And of course, no. But I had to battle with, why would I want to study the source of the issue? But to your point, if masculinities is the source of a lot of the social ills. And that goes back to the paradigm of masculinities, domination, power, control. And so that creates all of these paradigms of marginalization. So I really think that if we can help solve, and it's controversial, because people say, well, they've been in control. Men have held the power. Why take the microphone away from them? Don't go sit in a corner. And I'm like, well, we could say that about everybody, but if the goal is to move forward and the goal is equality for all people, regardless of gender, age, sex, color, race, religion, ability, you name it, if we're all equal, then it's not equal to tell somebody that you don't belong here because you've had all the power. We need to retrain them meaning society, of how a man should fit within society, and restructure that paradigm. And that is the learning curve. I don't believe in being punitive and sending all the men, all the white men especially, to an island as a form of prison reform. I think we should reintegrate them in society in a way that they no longer have the liberties and the privileges that they had before. And that's through new ways of engagement. There's a new accountability. I mean, listen, I was in corporate America for almost 20 years. If I got so sick of the men, where if you walk by, it has to be a sports talk. That is a very masculine, hierarchical mode of engagement, where the first question is, what sports team do you like? So I think there's a lot of masculine communication styles, behaviors that are really archaic, and they've just been sort of cherished and protected as a mode of protecting this power. And if you really pull back what the behavior, it's the behavior that's the problem, and address the behavior, then it's no longer acceptable in an egalitarian society.
And when we talk all these important points where we comes as a women dialogues, so how you see having those global dialogues like Women Dialogues talk show is important, or is playing a really important role in creating new definition?
Yeah, I think what you're doing is very important, because what you're doing is you're giving voices platform of sharing ideas. And it's within the sharing of ideas that we all learn, grow. And I also am really commending you on the fact that it's a global platform, because I equally agree in that. And we are all one people. And although we have different experiences, we are all humans, and it's in the learning of the experiences of other cultures, religions, you realize how much we're the same. And so it's the only way we can respect each other is if we get to know each other. So I always say, go back to asking questions and having conversation. Who are you? What do you do? What do you like? We're all, at the end of the day, similarities aside, we're all humans. And that's, to me, in my opinion, it's that simple.
Right. So thank you. Thanks a lot, Zara, for sharing your knowledge, wisdom, experiences, and same time having such strong, faith that we are creating voice for all. So thanks a lot for all being with us today, sharing again, I'll say sharing your knowledge with us today. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. And it's a real pleasure and an honor to be here. You have great guests, you have great questions, and you're really doing incredible work. So keep doing what you're doing, and we'll be the change and see the change that we want in this world. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And thanks to all our audience who are listening and watching us. As we always say, and you heard from Zara what she is doing, how she is bringing change in her own life, but along with that, she has purpose and mission while she want to do in her life. The same thing we want to create in your life, in your way of life. And if you feel you need any support, we always put description about our speaker in the description as well. So those details you can see, and you can reach out to them if they align with your purpose to grow or to get some kind of support. Along with that, we would like to happy to hear from you you can put your comment as well. And with the same way, we will bring new speaker with new motivation and new learning. Keep learning and stay safe. I'll see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.